Hello, Jen here with a layout for Tuesday's inspiration. That is the inspiration photo that we're using last week. I did not get this video put up last week. My mic is not working. So I tried to do real-time videos and it honestly just doesn't always work out for me. I don't always have a large enough kind of gap of time where there is no one in the house and there's no noise happening, where I can just sit and create a layout and kind of talk as I'm doing it and then post it. So usually what happens is I start and you could see me kind of talking with my hands and I'm showing you things. I was fully engaged in talking as I was doing this. But then the doorbell rang and then one of the kids came home early and then, the light started to go. It just became a whole thing. There I am. I'm having a conversation with you. I was talking about the type of pattern that I was looking for the background. And it just, it's hard. I live in a house of 8 people. I don't have my own scrap room. So it can be hard to do that kind of thing. And so voiceovers really just make sure that I can give you a rundown of what's happening and share with you, what my process is. Without all of that background noise. And right now there is also background noise because for whatever reason, Luna always decides that the minute that I start talking into a microphone is when she needs to play with all of her noisiest toys. And you can hear her bells going and stuff too. She's going full blown playing around. I think she thinks I'm talking to her when I'm talking to you guys, and it energizes her and gets her excited. But with all that being said, it's hard sometimes when my microphone's not always working and it gets staticky and things are weird. It's just time to be updated. I need new equipment for everything. So donate a coffee, buy me a coffee, because really all that coffee money will be going to new equipment. Anyways, let me tell you about this layout. So the inspiration piece, you know, the first thing I saw was the colors. They're just so bright and vivid and intense, and I love that kind of thing. Very bold color. It's definitely my colors, kind of in those blues, greens, but there's some pops of the yellows and reds and orange, kind of giving the rainbow look, which I love. But I thought that might be too easy to go with the most obvious thing. Sometimes that's fine. Go with the most obvious thing. It has to be what inspires you. So if that's what stands out and that's what makes you think this is what I'm going to create, then go for it. But I wanted to try to bring something a little bit different. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually using the design of the image itself rather than what the specific image is about. So I'm basically creating that color palette, color swatch design. And so what I needed to do is I needed to find all of the elements that would work. And I happened, when I was kind of looking through all of my supplies, trying to figure out what pictures I might want to scrap with and what papers and stuff I wanted to use, I pulled out this, what's it called? Chillin' with My Snowmies collection. And the first thing I pulled out was actually the cardstock pack, and it has the color swatch as the front little cover, so all of the colors. I just pointed to it right there. It tells you all the colors that are in the solids cardstock pack. I don't normally get those, but Sandy likes to send stuff like that to me when I'm doing design team stuff, and I absolutely love it because she really makes me use products that I sometimes don't tend to reach for and take for granted. And I actually really like getting the solid cardstock colors because it lets me do stuff like this. Essentially, that swatch, which would normally be horizontal in the package, I'm just turning it vertically, and now I have the same design that is in our inspiration picture. So I grabbed out the cardstock, and then she also sent the pack, the full kit. So I have pattern papers with the stickers, I have the cut apart sheets, I have all of that. And so I needed to pick a pattern that I felt kind of represented the picture in the same way. And what I was kind of going for was the weight of the picture. And so I definitely needed a pattern that has all of these colors in it, but then I also wanted something that felt kind of as intense and bold as the inspiration photo is. So there were lots of good options that were on white backgrounds, but I felt like that was too airy. It was a little bit too light. It was just, there was a lot of white space that kind of felt like it was less intense or less bold. So I went for a pattern that had color in the background. And then I just picked the cardstock colors, or like the solids that aren't that same blue. So I went with the two blues that are just a little bit darker, and then a green, the burgundy, and then that kind of peachy salmony color. What I also thought that I would do is create a little flip out. So I have these photos, and essentially the 4 little pictures that I took were of the kind of snowstorm that happened. We woke up in the morning. I woke up in the morning and kind of documented like walking outside, seeing the snow. I took a picture of myself. There's a picture of my drive to work, which was just like a crazy whiteout. And then getting home from work, the snow had actually stopped. And right across the street from us is a big green space park that leads down to the river. And so it was just this beautiful winter wonderland of trees and stuff. It was really pretty. So I snapped that. And then later that afternoon, when the kids got home from school, of course, they played in the snow. And so my little guy did his first snow angel of the year. So I snapped that. So I thought all of these pictures work together. I want them kind of together. But I also didn't want to take a bunch of pictures and put them over top of the pattern and kind of lose the visual effect that I was going for with the inspiration piece. So I'm going to hide it. And this has been a topic of conversation that has actually come up a few times in some of the different Facebook groups that I'm in. And so I was sort of already thinking about interactive elements and how we kind of attach interactive elements and that sort of thing. So it was on my mind, which I guess was another kind of inspiration that I had for this layout. I like doing this kind of stuff, but I was thinking, what are some other ways that you can kind of create these elements? For me, I'm very casual with them. So right here, I'm creating my little hinge, and I just happen to use some of the packaging. That front cover, not with all manufacturers, but with some manufacturers, that sort of front page or front cover is a different type of cardstock. It's like a textured paper that is glossed over, so it's a little bit more plasticky. It can be kind of creased and folded and hinged a little bit more. It doesn't kind of fold all of the fibers and break the fibers like a regular cardstock paper does, or printer paper, or those types of papers, because I guess they're uncoated, and this obviously has some coating. You can clearly see I don't actually know the science of paper, but essentially you would know by touching it. It's glossy, it has a different texture to it, and it can work really well as a hinge because it is sort of coated, and so those fibers don't break. So this hinge can actually fold back and forth several times without it tearing the way that a more fibrous paper might that doesn't have that coating. So if you don't have washi tape, which is sort of my go-to all the time for creating my little flip outs and hinges and stuff, if you don't have washi tape, or you don't want to use your washi tape in that way, this is another material you could use. Or I've actually, one time we were traveling and I wanted to make a little kind of tip out, and I didn't have any washi tape left over. I actually used plastic packaging. It was a total fluke that it kind of, came to my mind. I actually had some Project Life cards that I was using, and I put one down on my desk, and it just happened to hit where the plastic packaging, where the adhesive is that opens up, so the natural hinge was there. And when I went looking for that card and I picked it up and it was sort of stuck to the packaging, I realized it was hinging really nicely. And so I used plastic packaging to create my little hinge. So here I'm using something else. So I really think the moral of this story is, one of the things that I've said in the groups when people are asking is I kind of experiment. I feel like there is not really a right or wrong way to create these types of interactive elements. And depending on what you're trying to achieve, I think you just use what you have. You kind of experiment. And if it doesn't work out, try something else. It's just paper. And, as long as you kind of understand what it's doing, so in this case, it's folding back and forth. So I realized that if I were to use just regular cardstock or branding strips, I've seen people do that kind of thing, eventually that motion of moving back and forth will break the paper enough that it will rip. And so I tend to just experiment with other things besides regular paper. But other than that, there aren't a lot of rules. So I just created this hinge with a little bit of that front paper. It's going to work well enough for me. I have it adhered down really well. I made sure there was just the slightest little gap between the two pieces of paper so that when it folds, they don't kind of fold on top of each other and create a little bit of bulk. They fold nicely, and that's it. That was pretty quick and simple and easy to do. And, whatever kind of supplies you have at home that you want to try to experiment with, I say go for it and see what works. Some materials work better than others, but if you don't give it a try, you just never know. And how do you tuck things in and where do you put it? In this case, I hid part of the packaging behind those little swatches. And so rather than cutting out 5 individual pieces to make my swatches, I cut out one solid piece, which was the burgundy paper, and then I added the other colors in the order that I kind of wanted them to appear. And those other colors gave me the opportunity to hide my little hinge. So you noticed where the burgundy is showing, I had to cut that hinge and give myself a bit of a gap. But other than that, it was really easy. And I guess where that gap is, if you really wanted to, you could add something, because now it will slip through. You could add some ribbon or that kind of thing. If you were doing this as a card, that would be a good spot to maybe put some ribbon that goes around the layout. But essentially, I created that hinge and kind of hid the hinge behind my papers. And then because another layout will go on the back side of this, I didn't have to hide it on the back. But if you wanted to do that, you could always hide it with something decorative, embellishments, that kind of thing. And I have lots of videos where I show myself doing this and how I kind of tuck things in and hide them. But honestly, it's experimentation. And when I find something that works, I kind of use it for a while. And then when another idea comes to my head, I just jump in and see what I can do with it. And this allowed me to get more of those photos in there. So along that left-hand side, I have my day. So you can see like waking up in the morning. I go to work when it's still dark out. So you can see waking up in the morning and it's snowing, and then a selfie where it's still snowing, and then my drive to work. And then when I got home from work, it's also kind of dark when I get home because I live in Canada and we don't have a lot of daylight in the winter. But that was sort of the succession of photos on that left-hand side. And then there's my little guy with his snow angel. I try to document that every year with my kids. I still make my big kids go out and play in the snow too, even though they're definitely more reluctant than they used to be now that they're in their 20s. But yes, we celebrate that kind of first snowfall. I don't think this was the first snowfall technically, but the official first snowfall that happened this year, I think it wasn't a great snow. It was like an icy kind of pellety snow. So the kids, and it was really, really late at night, kind of into the early morning hours. So they didn't play with that one, but we're going to go ahead and say that this was the first official one. So now that I have that left-hand side done, I realized when I opened the layout and I'm kind of looking at it as that little section plus 12, the 12 by 12, it looked a little weird and kind of off center and just not really balanced because of where the photo, that larger photo cluster is going to go. And then there's this sort of gap where when you look at the layout when it's folded, that's where the color swatch is. And so I'm just finding some little sort of embellishment cluster that I can put there just to add a little bit of interest. So it looks good when it's closed, and then it also looks good when it's open. So the other elements that I have for this collection, which I should say, this collection is actually a couple years old. I think this is a 2024 collection. I did get this a while ago, so I don't know if there's any left in the store, but you can definitely check. I'll leave the links down below. But this is an Echo Park collection, and there's lots of different collections, you know, like they all come out with these. Sorry, let me try that again. All the different manufacturers come out with collections now that include the solid cardstock. So, you know, you might not be able to find this one specifically, but any winter collection is going to have those same kind of elements and the same kind of fun. I do like this one because it has a lot of those kind of cutesy images, the snowmen and the penguins and stuff like that. But then it also has snow globes and trees and some more kind of wintry, but I always say, I hate to use the word mature. It's not mature necessarily versus immature, but more like just a different style versus the cutesy style. This one combines the two of them really well. And so you kind of get a little bit of everything depending on what you're scrapping. So here I was okay with some of the cutesy elements, like in the little snow globes, there's the cute little snowmen and stuff like that. But I'm also scrapbooking some stuff that is more for me and just about the weather in general. And so not all of the elements have to be super cute and sweet. So I was able to kind of grab some of those elements too. But what I also have, apart from the cardstock, the solids package, and then the collection kit, is I have 2 of the chipboard stickers. I think they call them the accent stickers, and then I have the titles chipboard stickers. I have the puffy stickers, and I also have the frames and tags. So I just kind of dug in there and pulled out a few things that I thought would work. I got a title from one of the chipboard, this one here that I'm going to work on, and then I got a couple elements from the tags and frames just to create a bit of a cluster. And then I also cut out one of the 3x4 cards from the cut apart sheet that's in the pattern papers. Oh, I am tripping over my words today. So I just pulled out a few things that I thought worked, kind of tried to get a combination of all of the colors. So I didn't really focus on just one color or 1 or 2 colors for my embellishments. I tried to get a little bit of everything to represent all of the colors that are in that swatch. Again, going with that idea that the swatch is kind of nice and bold and straightforward on the inspiration photo with all of those solids, and then the picture that represents all of those colors is super intense. It fills up the whole photo. There's no white space in it, and it's quite bold, and so I wanted to kind of have that same feeling. So I made sure that I was picking all of the colors, because that's sort of the point of a color palette, is someone has taken that image and then pulled all of the colors out of it that are represented in the image. And so, you're kind of seeing now the solid version of all of those colors. And I didn't want to sort of lose that fact in my layout. So I made sure to try to represent as many of them as I could. So I've got like a little flurries and fun, and I think the other one says welcome winter and then let it snow. So just the general weather type sayings that I could kind of fit in there, and a few little embellishments. It is definitely a busy background, so you can see I'm trying to set everything up so that they don't all just blend in and you miss each of those pieces, which is definitely a struggle for me, I think, when I use busy backgrounds. But if you wanted, you could always use a little bit of gesso or something and kind of push that background back. The gesso doesn't fully cover it up. It doesn't give you a solid white. I guess unless you wanted to, you could build it up and make it solid white. But it just kind of gently pushes the pattern back a little bit. So you could do that if you thought the pattern was too busy. But again, it was kind of the whole point for me. So I had to make sure that I wasn't completely covering it up or distracting from it. And then my last little finishing touches, I thought I would go ahead and put some sort of little indicator, a little tab on the top, so that when this is in my page protector, I can kind of remind myself that there's an interactive element to it. I always like to say that I have the best intentions of creating some sort of pocket page that allows those interactive elements to be used while they're still protected in their page protector, but I don't always have the time. I laugh at myself because it's just one of those excuses I think we all give, but I don't often have the time to go back once I've got it into its page protector and then try to experiment and fiddle around with how to adapt the page protector to accommodate the layout. So I have said a few times that I would show you the kinds of things that I do, and I have created page protectors like that before, but it has been a while, and I probably have I'd say I have at least a dozen of them that I could go back and maybe spend a whole day. Maybe that's what I have to do. Just pick a day and schedule myself to create page protectors, and I'll take you along on the journey. I won't make a promise of when that's going to happen, but I will make a promise that it will happen someday. One day, someday. But yes, to be perfectly honest, a lot of these get put straight into the page protector. And if you want to open the interactive portion, you have to pull it out of the page protector. And I'm okay with that because I just live the kind of life right now where I can't always devote the time to change that. But one day I will. So that is my little finishing touch, and then I kind of embellished up there so it didn't look like just this random piece of paper. And then of course some splatters of white and gold and some sequins, and that is it. That is my layout for last week's Tuesday's inspiration. Please go and check out Hollie and Lynda and Mel's layouts as well. We don't always post every single week, each one of us, but at least one of us does post every week, so you can check out the master playlist to find all of our videos. Subscribe if you haven't already, and check out my Instagram accounts too. And I appreciate it so much that you guys were here today to watch. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And until next time, happy scrapping. Bye.